Hey IT 500 students, the purpose of this video is to talk you through the assignment guidelines for the EDPE Life-Cycle report. I don't think I'm going to be saying anything particularly new from what the assignment says, but over the years a lot of students have told me that it's useful to hear me talk about the major assignments in addition to you having them in writing. So I've got my assignment guidelines here. This video might be most useful if you have the EDPE life cycle report, the assignment guidelines in front of you. And I'm just going to talk about several things here. First of all, do you understand the intention of this report? Your group focusing on writing this report can only occur after your group has focused on solving the design problem at hand. So the EDPE Lifecycle report is a debriefing report of what happened in your groups while you were trying to solve the client's problems. So the first time your group meets, if someone's opening line is, "So what do we need to say in this EDPE Lifecycle report?" that's indication that your group is missing the entire point. You have to start by solving the client's problem, and while you're doing that, keep process notes. Are you recording your meetings? After meetings, is everybody journaling about what happened? Do you have a group secretary who's keeping some detailed records, maybe even two, so that you can focus on solving the client's problems, but then you have content to come back to for this EDPE report? So, okay, notice the audience for the report right away here. The audience for the EDPE Lifecycle report is not your clients. There may be some artifacts in this report that you would show to your clients, but you are writing for people who care about process, about creative innovation and design thinking. You are writing for the author of your textbooks, for the authors of articles that you've read this semester, for your professors. This is about the life cycle of the project. So that audience is very important here. Now, organization of the report, the next heading in the assignment guidelines. I strongly recommend that you stick with the headings of EDPE, envision, design, produce, and evaluate. But you're going to see as we go here, you do have some latitude. Let's talk about each heading of the report briefly, though it's all kind of right here in front of you. Envisioning. What did your group do to make decisions about what you're going to design? The imaginative and playful processes that you went through. Did you use probing questions? Did you scamper? Did you do some role plays? Did you just try to take an idea and improv off the idea? Did you start by going linearly through all the initial treatments? What was your group's, your design team's process to imaginatively and playfully design? Possible artifacts. Now, to be clear, when I say possible artifacts, I do not mean that artifacts are optional. I mean that you have broad latitude on what those artifacts in each section might be. Here are some ideas. Maybe they are meeting notes to show your improvisations. So you're meeting at, I don't know, St. Louis Bread Company, and somebody says, "Well, what about this?" And somebody else says, "Well, what about this?" And, "Oh, yes, and this. Who's recording all that? So that you can get it in your EDPE report. Maybe it's meeting notes. Maybe it's Scamper documents. Maybe it's things that you drew on the back of a napkin while you were sitting there. Maybe it's excerpts from Blackboard discussions. It could be a variety of things. But how are you going to capture the imaginative and playful processes that your group went through? Design. Here, an artifact. Let me just jump to artifacts. What are you going to give to your clients? And the assignment asks for a scopes document. That absolutely should be one of the artifacts in your design section. So in design, what are the ideas that survived your envisioning process? In envisioning, you might have a bunch of stuff that never got off the table, right? That never made it to design. But design is narrower than envisioning. What survived envisioning that you now have started designing to show your clients? And not just the products, but your processes. So I'm totally making this up, of course, but our group decided the best thing we could do for our scopes document is to describe the rules of the game that we envisioned. So our process was Bill and Sally agreed to draft the rules of the game. If you look in Artifact B, you can see their draft. But then they sent it to Joan and Betty, who revised and made suggestions. Here's the revised document in C. You will notice a difference is that C, right, you get the idea. You have to show us both what you would give to clients and the collaborative process that you went through to get at the final drafts of the design that you would give to your clients. Let's talk produce. You do not have to actually produce, though you could. I mean, for instance, if you say in design, part of our design will be an interactive presentation. Maybe you do a mock-up of that presentation in PowerPoint. Not a polished one, not a refined one. You are aiming quick to fail fast, right? It's something you invested 30 minutes on and then just kind of sent out to the group. Is this the right idea? We'll include that. But maybe you don't have to produce it all. Maybe it's a description. We envision an interactive presentation that would have this, this, and this. What are those things that have to be produced? Maybe it's sketches. Maybe it's drawings. Now, a couple of things. Do you see that we are narrowing here? I sometimes in these types of reports get to the EDPE, get to the produce section, and the opening line will be, so we decided that Fred would take the responsibility for drawing all the pictures of the zoo animals. And I'm going back to your design. There's nothing here about needing pictures of zoo animals. Everything should be narrowing. Envision is broad. Design is what survived envisioning. Produce are those artifacts, those things that need to be created to activate your designs. If you didn't mention it in your design section, it probably doesn't need to be produced. If you mentioned it in your design section, then it ultimately would have to be produced. Sketches, drawings. If you say in design, all of the learners will be wearing wristbands that are interactive and allow the learner to engage the media. Well, what does the wristband look like? You need a sketch. So you are showing us those things that need to be produced and the process. So once Fred drew the farm animals, what happened? Who did he send them to? What did that person do with them? How did you move from an initial prototype to a refined prototype? So in each of these sections, there is both process and product. The evaluate section. Again, notice the narrowing process here. Look at what I say. That is, how will your design team determine the quality of your team's designs and productions? Maybe you're envisionings too, but you are evaluating at least what was moved forward. There's a narrowing process. Notice also this is not about judging your learners. This is not about assessment. Did the learners learn? This is about evaluation. Were your designs and productions any good? How would you judge that before you implement? What would be your plan while you are implementing, after implementation? Again, the process of how. So if you tell me that you did a survey, who drafted the survey questions? Who did that person then send them to? What kind of feedback did that person have? So who revised them? Who saw them next? You are taking us through the life cycle of what you did given the time constraints that you had. Okay? So do you see that in all of this, you are getting at how your group worked, what your group did. Let's talk criteria here. Bullet number 1, and I've kind of been talking about these criteria. You should see that the criteria fit with the flow of the report. Bullet number 1, does your report use vivid writing in all sections? Stories, anecdotes, dialogue, vignettes, process-driven details within each section to bring us into exact moments of the project cycle unfolding. It was at the moment that Keith said, bleh, that we all went, aha, that's it. That's it. It is the old Seinfeld story. Sorry if I'm showing my age here with this example, but Seinfeld tells a story of being in the room with the writers engaged in process. When one of the writers said, not that there's anything wrong with that, and they all immediately just froze. There's the line. There's the line that in the early 90s would allow them to do this show on what was then a very controversial and sensitive issue. Seinfeld brought the process down to an exact sentence and moment. Tell me about that. Vivid writing, stories, anecdotes, dialogue, vignettes, the process. If you cannot underline in each section where your group all goes, this is vivid writing, your report will not be received as being successful. Next bullet, does each section point to exact course readings? So you will be using plussing, risk-taking, building to learn, writing to learn, all these things you've been reading about all semester. How could you possibly talk about that without direct references to Sims? Without direct references to maybe media method articles, if you've read those yet. Maybe the history of IT, if you've read those yet. There should be references to what you've done in this class that is informing your process. By author name. Maybe you need to quote from the authors. Maybe you need to refer to exact slideshows. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but if there was a slideshow or a YouTube video that informed your process that you were told to look at in this class, refer to that. Exact course readings or materials that influenced how your team created. Next bullet. Do your design, produce, and evaluate sections include explanation of the results of your process. So I've been talking about this. You know, if you say under design, well, we decided to be a bit traditional here and to begin by writing learner objectives, then one of your artifacts had better be the learner objectives. So process, the how, but also the results, the what your group created or would plan to create, the sketches. Next bullet. Is it clear from your report that your team pushed its powers of creative processes that led to the results? There should be a logical progression from beginning to end here. I've kind of already talked about that. Really, when I finish reading your envisioning section, I should kind of know what you're going to be talking about in your design section. When I finish reading your design section, I should kind of know what it is that you're ultimately going to have to produce. There should be a logical progression from beginning to end. And when I finish reading your design and your production section, I should already know at least what it is that you're going to have to evaluate. The what should flow out of the how. Is there a logical progression in the report? We see it in juries, and I see it in these EDPE reports, that all of a sudden a statement will be made in the middle of the narrative, in the middle of the report, that just comes out of nowhere. My example earlier about, Fred will be drawing the pictures of the zoo animals. Why do you need pictures of zoo animals? Bring us along logically. Next bullet, within each section of your report, do you point to and discuss artifacts? You are not just listing the artifacts at the end of the section. So you finish your design section and you have a artifacts, bam, 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 bam. No, you are discussing them, right? So while we were at Panera Bread Company, we realized we needed to visualize this. Fortunately, someone had their iPad with them. So we opened up a drawing program in iPad, and with our finger, we doodled a flow chart. You can find that flow chart in Appendix B. Weave the artifacts into your discussion. If you were to continue reading this bullet, I give you even language you can use. I mean, look, Appendix B includes 2 versions of our game scenario that we created. You will see a key difference between them is that. So you are not just having artifacts, you are using the artifacts in your EDPE report to bring along these readers to give us insights into your process. Next bullet, is your report written to demonstrate that each team member had a hand in the group process and in writing, revising, or editing both your scopes document for your clients and this EDPE report? I will tell you that in an earlier draft, I actually said for this criterion, each team member should be mentioned at least once under each section. I decided that was a little too mechanical, but that does kind of show the point. I should be able to see, and if you put this scopes document away for a year and then got it back out to, say, write juries, you should be able to see, what was my role again? Where exactly was I involved in each part? An EDPE report with a typo that a 7th grader would have caught is simply unacceptable. That says a ton about process. Surely, if 7th grade students read the final draft of something, there will not be any sentences that just make so little sense that if a 7th grader read it, they'd be like, huh? Ooh, what does that mean? There's no verb in this sentence, right? Or the is spelt T-H-O. It's simply unacceptable. In an assignment where you have gone beyond writing to learn and you've taken us into writing to inform, it's perfectly acceptable in your artifacts on the back of your napkin, in maybe a rough draft of a sketch you made. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, who cares? But in your scopes document that you're going to hand to clients in a meeting, in your EDPE report that you would give to Sims, to me, say, here's our process. Come on, proofread, proofread, proofread. We are beyond writing to learn at that point. Headings, you have some latitude here. I need to be able to see a progression from how did you make decisions, what decisions did you make about both design and production, and how are you going to evaluate. But if you decide that it's not an EDPE report, it's an EDPE report, because imagining makes more sense to you than envisioning, that's okay. That's fine. Maybe it's not an EDPE report. Maybe it's an EDPE report. Envision, design. Ooh, we got to envision again. Now we've got to redesign. Now we've got to produce. Ooh, that leads us back to envisioning. So you've got some latitude here. But does it authentically take us through the life cycle of your initial play, narrowing to, okay, what are we going to design? Now, what do we need to create and produce? Now, how are we going to evaluate? Okay? Hey, 22 minutes. Wow. I hope this has been useful to you. Once again, I don't think I've said anything that isn't said in writing. Still, I hope this has been helpful. Peace.